The Community Empowerment Scotland Act was passed by the Scottish Parliament in 2015, and with this, the Community Ownership Support Service developed our Asset Transfer Route Map. In conjunction with support from your coss advisor, this route map helps community organisations navigate the requirements of the law. This video uses the route map and a real community organisation to show how the step-by-step process has been used to achieve their aims and more. Rules of the road. Asset transfer requests are possible for all assets owned by Scottish public authorities. There is a presumption in favour of agreement. Assets may be transferred at less than market value. Communities can exit at any stage. North Coast Connection are a great example of a community organisation who have already acquired a public asset. This is their journey.
We're North Coast Connection, we're a registered charity and we run a community wellbeing hub based at the Kyle Centre in Tongue. We have a service level agreement with NHS Highland to run a community lunch club with health promoting activity 3 days a week. We employ 3 part-time staff, a manager, a cook and a centre support worker. The health promoting activities range from falls prevention exercises and activities and games. We've run various projects such as reminiscence projects, things like that. We hold premises for a CAB outreach worker and a dual sensory clinic. We have a laundry service for clients and we have a community garden project with the produce grown in the polytunnel is used for the lunches. When the building's not being used for our lunch club, it's available for hire by community groups and it's used by a variety of groups. A parent and toddler group, an art group. It's used for meetings for the community council and ourselves.
Right at the very beginning, the Callous Action Group, which was a group that started to fight for the local care home not to be closed, which they've successfully done for quite a long time. It was people from that group that called the public meeting that most of the village came out to. And at that meeting, people were asked if they were willing to get involved in doing something about the situation. And I think the original idea had been to save the service as it was, but that changed to become more than the need in the community. And those people, I think mostly we communicated ideas just by talking incessantly about it with everybody that we knew. And as the group came up with an idea that seemed to be taking some sort of form, we drew a diagram because to help us make sure that everybody really meant the same thing. So having drawn this diagram, then people going, yes, that's what I mean as well. And so that was our main method of communication, but also kind of telling a story of what we thought could be. And we still use that diagram today to explain to people what we're about. Very beginning, our local community council gave us a small donation and community councils in the neighbouring couple of villages also gave us a small amount of money, and with that we were able to cover the costs of things like going to visit, stationery for writing letters and printing and things like that. So we just had that little bit of money and we didn't have a formal organisation at that time, so the action group for the local care home, they acted as our banker for the first few months until we decided that we would actually do something and organise ourselves.
There is a tremendous amount of support from other community organisations. It's amazing if that you have this need that you feel you want to help other people who are in the same boat. And since we started up, we've done the same. People have come to see what we're doing and we've given support and advice. And when we were setting up, it was refreshing how much information and support you could get from other organisations. It was very good.
lots of support as we were coming up with the idea. The people that were involved in the group, we had quite a range of skills and abilities. We had somebody who had been involved with community development as kind of his day job, and he was now retired, semi-retired, and he was just a really great enabler of an ideas machine. It was absolutely brilliant. He was our first chairman. There was somebody from the Community Development Trust and the local Community Development Trust, and he was much more a, numbers, bottom line sort of man, so he kind of reined in the ideas to a much more practical, how are you going to do this? Our local councillor was brilliant. She was very supportive of us. Our social work development officer, she was really good at translating between social work management speak and ordinary human speak. So she helped a lot. We had input from Development Trusts Association Scotland and their Community Ownership Support Scheme. Liz Howard from HIE came along, and she helped us with getting some finance and putting us in touch with people as well. The local medical practice, one of the GPs there, was part of the group in terms of coming along to meetings and making sure that we stayed within the context that she had a proper view of and we only had a little glimpse of. And the local transport group, we had a good strong connection with them because they were vital to our plans going forward. One of the things that we decided to do was to get the core service, which was to run a lunch club, a community lunch club that was open to anybody with a health promoting activity 3 days a week. That was the thing that we needed to do because that was going to look after the frail and elderly people in our community who were losing the daycare service. So that was our absolute priority. But we knew that all of the wellbeing hub things that we wanted to do, we could develop alongside that. So once we had this thing that we had to do, we felt we had to do, up and running, then we would have opportunity to grow and develop, and we could do that at a speed that we could cope with, rather than trying to have everything set up on day one. We started off with a fairly back-of-the-envelope type of business plan that had our initial idea and a check to see whether or not the sort of thing we wanted to do could be done for the sort of amount of money that was going to be available. And then we had to develop and refine that quite robustly, shall I say, so that the social work department was satisfied that they were going to get value for money in terms of the service that we were providing for the funding they were offering, and that we were going to be able to sustain that, which would make us, in some sense, responsible owners of the building. It was part of the responsibility. The Melness and Tongue Development Trust, their project officer, helped us by just asking us some brutally numerical questions about some of the things we were thinking about. And then later on, we had some help from Just Enterprise, and one of their guys went over the business plan that we had, asked us some more questions, said it's a bit thin on the ground in this section, and said, and where's your cash flow? Cash flow, what's that? So we learned how to do a cash flow forecast as well. It made us ask ourselves questions, and people who looked at it asked us questions where they thought we'd kind of dodged the issue, so that was good. We were also able to use that business plan for other funding applications we made to other bodies later on, so it stood us in good stead to do such a robust thing to start with. We knew from quite early on that we wanted to be a charity because that was going to open up the possibility of quite a lot of funding to us. And also because the things that we wanted to do, we felt were charitable in the sense of why charities exist, which is to help and support and enable. We also were clear that if we were going to be employing people and owning property and stuff like that, we needed to be incorporated. But it was much, much harder to get what we thought was impartial advice about the best form to take. We got some help with making that decision from Just Enterprise. We got some business support so that we would then have the information that we needed to make the decision. So we didn't want an advice from them, we just wanted information, and they did that really well for us. had some bottom line things that we agreed with the folk who were going, that they could just walk away from the negotiations. If they were told no to these questions, then those were our bottom lines and we wouldn't do it, and that was that. We explained why we had these bottom line things, and the social work department explained why they were a bit of a challenge and what their bottom line things were as well. So we listened to one another. I think that was a kind of key part of it. It was never them and us. It was together we want to do this thing for our community, and that I think really helped.
We wanted to own the building because we were taking it over as a community building, and we wanted to be able to move it on from its social work past to a venue that was for the whole community. And if we wanted to make any changes, we needed to own it. We didn't want to be renting or leasing and then have somebody else be responsible for repairs. We wanted to have that control ourselves. And if at such time we wanted to develop the building, although that wasn't part of the original plan, the ownership was important to us.
The process of the asset transfer request in Part 5 of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act progresses more smoothly if communication is open and honest between owners, community and all major stakeholders. Communication helps both owners and communities to gather all of the relevant information required. Asset transfer is about the best way to deliver benefits to people and ensure services are protected as much as possible in times when resources and money are scarce.
There are hundreds of examples across Scotland and the UK where communities have demonstrated that they can do this well and be sustainable.
In many cases, they have gone on to deliver far more than they ever expected when putting forward their original proposal. Owning an asset can open up opportunities that had never been imagined. It gives communities a sense of ownership and a strong connection. There's a huge amount of support for community groups to call upon to keep them on track. North Coast Connection worked hard to ensure their plans were sustainable and their proposal fitted the needs of their community, as well as delivering services on behalf of the public body they were working with. Once they had made their case and the asset was transferred, they were able to achieve what they had set out to do and so much more.
That asset transfer process was already in process when we began to realise the limitations of the building for what we wanted to do once we were actually in and using it in practice. And so our realisation that we needed to develop the building didn't come at the very beginning, but it wasn't long after we got up and running we realised that the kitchen was really woefully inadequate for what we needed to do, and that the accessible toilets were not quite as accessible as we discovered in practice. We started off by going for a stage 1 grant with the lottery with community spaces, and we had no idea whether we would get that or not. But when we did get that, that enabled us to get ourselves into a very good position to apply for the stage 2 grant, for the big grant, because it enabled us to employ some professionals, an architect, and I think it was an architect that was able to draw up a proper plan of what might be, and we were able to ask for planning permission, so having those things ready and all of the other things that you need for lottery stage 2 grant. The lottery insisted that we put it out to tender, which we did, and we got 5 expressions of interest and only 2 tenders back, but they said that was enough. But even the lowest one of those was for more than we had funding in place for, so actually it's not quite as big as it would have been. There'd have been a shower. So we did have to downsize our ideas to meet the money. Our understanding was that the asset transfer of the building would be at a very nominal sum, but that the land either side of the building that everybody just assumed was the Kyle Centre turned out not to be part of the Kyle Centre at all. It was like a metre or so on either side of the actual building. And one piece of land was earmarked for housing, so they wouldn't sell that to us. But the other piece to the west of the building, that was available at full market value to buy. And so we reckon that actually we did want to own that piece of land because we didn't think anybody else would put anything there, but for us it was an obviously useful piece of land to have for a garden or perhaps to extend into, and having an outdoor area that people could use was part of our vision for well-being, that indoors and outdoors are both important. So we were able to lease the housing bit of land and we put a community garden on that. But the lease negotiations were non-trivial.
We came into the building fairly quietly to make sure that everything worked and everything was okay, and we had an official opening just a few months later with our local councillor open the building. We then had a year later, we had our birthday celebration. We had a celebration for that. And for the opening of the new building, we came in quietly to make sure everything would work, and everybody kept asking us, when are you having the official opening? So we had an official opening of sorts, and that was our oldest client, who will be 100 years old in November and is still coming every week for lunch. She officially opened the Kyle Centre for us. And we had a wonderful attendance from the community. The place was packed.
When we opened it as the lunch club, you then no longer required assessment by a social worker to say that you were eligible to come. And it was literally just we opened the doors and said, right, who wants to come to lunch? We didn't just want the Kyle Centre to be a place where the old people went. We wanted it to be a place for the whole community and to be inclusive. In that respect, there was just this drive to go on to develop the service further. And the demand within the community for people who wanted to come in to use the lunch club, who wanted to come in to use the facilities. We've been really fortunate that we've had fantastic volunteers who we've since been able to bring into paid posts, which is so, I'm just so happy about, because it's just, if you are willing to give up your time and come and work for us, that it's just fabulous that, that you have the opportunity to move into a paid post when that post becomes available. So that's been, something, especially in a small community where there aren't very many opportunities.
I would say that if you get good people together that you get on with, then it's great fun. And seeing the results is wonderful. Part of me says, don't get started, because it'll take over your life.
If you could, would you do it again?
It has been very hard work, but if I had to do it all again, yes, I would.
The Community Ownership Support Service have been working across Scotland for a number of years and have successfully helped more than 700 community groups explore options for taking public land or buildings into community ownership, lease or management. If you're interested in asset transfer as a community organisation or a relevant authority, get in touch with the Community Ownership Support Service. We can help.
Was your business plan sufficient for your needs as well as satisfying the funders and the public body that owned the asset?
The business plan was sufficient for whoever you just said, and I've forgotten already.
For years. So, was your business plan sufficient for
all those big long words.
what we're trying to drive at is why you've
Explain to Marion the mouse that she needs to sit still. No, I don't want her sitting behind you, pulling face.
Sorry, we're almost done with this, so sorry Marion, the mic's really sensitive.
What changes, if any, were made to the original idea as you developed your plan, and why were changes made?
The original plan was... Did we have a plan? Sorry.
Do you want me to ask the question
Yes.
again? Did your plan include...
I still can't repeat the question before
before
I answer it, because I've forgotten what it was.
You just need to know that we decided to take the asset.
It's okay.
We exactly all of the things that you wanted to do when you first took the building.
Right.
How confident were you would get the
Right.
funding?
We weren't.
Start that again. Sorry, I'm completely going off track. How did you focus on the social outcomes of the plan to help persuade them to transfer at the discounted price?
Yeah. We just told them what we wanted.
I suppose what I'm trying to get to here is that
If you want to close a day centre, you're going to have to give us a building for £1, okay?